Well, how about some good news for the future of Marvel, Marvel Comics, and Marvel Studios? Marvel has reached an agreement and a settlement with some of the rights holders to some characters they could have potentially lost. But not all of them. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about this story, what's going on, and which characters are currently safe and not safe. Well, if you're a fan of Marvel Comics, you know Stan Lee is frequently credited as the sole creator of many of Marvel's most iconic characters. But you also know many of the artists who worked alongside him during that process have long disputed their claim and contributed heavily to the creation of these characters. This has led to some legal wrangling over the years, and most recently, some major characters from Marvel could potentially be pulled from the Marvel lineup. Attorney Mark Teberoff, who represents Stan Lee's little brother, Larry Lieber, as well as the estates of some of the artists like Don Heck, Gene Colan, and Don Rico, recently attempted to terminate Marvel's copyright rights to several characters. And when I say several characters, I mean some big ones. Ant-Man, Iron Man, Thor, Blade, Captain Marvel, Black Widow, and Hawkeye, all of which are either A-list or near A-list characters for Marvel and would have been a massive loss for the comic company and the studio. Now, as many of you know, Marvel is with Disney, and Disney is known for their lawyers, so it did not take long for them to file a lawsuit right back at them, creating a rather contentious fight and potentially putting those characters in limbo for a really long time. Now, the good news is a settlement has been reached, and it looks like those characters are now safe. Now, Marvel's response was that these artists did what's known as work for hire, thereby meaning Marvel owns the characters in perpetuity. Work for hire basically leaves the artist with no right to reclaim them under the Copyright Act and is basically the equivalence of doing contract work that you don't really have any ownership of what you were made, you trade that for your weekly, daily, or monthly wage. Now, the lawsuit has been dropped with prejudice and should bring an end to the matter for these particular characters once and for all. Now, the good news is it appears like everybody's happy, because spokesmen for Disney and Teberoff have both said that each side has reached an amicable resolution. Now, obviously the details will never be revealed to the general public, but this is code for everybody's been financially compensated in a way that makes everyone happy. And ultimately, that's really what this should be, because many of these artists really didn't get paid for their creations initially, so it's good to see the payday finally be delivered. Now, there is a caveat here, and it's a big one, because there was no settlement reached for the family of Steve Ditko. Now, the Ditko family is looking to reclaim the rights of two major Marvel characters, Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Although, if I'm being honest, it's very likely, should this go to trial, Marvel will win once again, because this has been resolved before in the past, and it's likely just about them negotiating a settlement. Way back in 2013, Marvel won a very similar case at the US Court of Appeals regarding the legendary Jack Kirby. Now, Jack Kirby was a co-creator on characters like Captain America and the Fantastic Four. And this case was also eventually settled, with once again everybody reaching a quote amicable resolution, and the Kirby family likely being compensated in a way that made everybody happy. Now, this isn't something that just happens at Marvel. Rights to characters are something that's very contentious with creators and artists industry-wide. Probably the most famous guy to kind of get screwed over would be Bill Finger, who was a co-creator of Batman, delivered most of the iconic visuals and supporting characters, as well as things like the Batmobile and the Batcave, but he left DC and actually died penniless. It's really good to see Marvel settling these lawsuits with these families. Honestly, work for hire is really clear and kind of settled law, but I do think these artists should have been compensated. I have to imagine it's very difficult to see a character that either you created or your family member created turn into a multi-billion-dollar franchise, but the creator themselves never really see any of that money, even if it's just a token amount. Now, we're getting ready to get a Stan Lee documentary on Disney+, and I really do hope they dive into this a little bit. It looks to be a celebration of his life, as much as a biography, but I hope they do credit the proper artists and other people that really brought the Marvel Universe to life. There's no doubt Stan Lee helped shepherd in this era of comics, but he had an army of really talented and great artists and creators behind him, and they absolutely should get credit. Hopefully the Ditko family also reaches some resolution with Marvel. The odds on them ever losing the rights to these characters is somewhat slim, but this case is worth keeping an eye on, and honestly, we're gonna have to wait and see.